Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Unwritten with Thomas Malpass. In today's episode, I have Pat Williams. Pat Williams is an creative artist and painter for over 30, 40 years. Basically, he's been creating art for nearly his entire life. And in this episode, we discuss his journey of creativity, balancing art and life, his entrepreneurial ventures in the creative world, the power of imagination, and the emotional connection to art and the role of play in human development. Because when we're kids, we play all the time, but we forget to play as adults. We also discuss how to restore and nurture your creativity, no matter who you are, and navigating the highs and the lows of a creative life. We also reflect on his influences, his regrets, and the big impact of success and scrutiny in the art world. Let's get right into it. Enjoy. Welcome to the Unwritten Podcast with your host, Thomas Malpass, where we are on a mission to help the world find more purpose, passion, and peace in their everyday lives. Through deep conversations and connection, tune in because we are all on this journey of life together. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. And yourself?
I'm good. A little tired.
Yeah, I was just down in Texas in September for my sister's wedding. Down there. That was good.
Fun?
Yeah, it was fun. It was they are not very young. So my sister's 76. So and she married a younger man.
Remarried at 76.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they're like teenagers together. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, that just shows like it doesn't matter.
It does not matter.
It doesn't matter your age.
Yep, when it happens, it happens.
I think people they want it to happen sooner than later.
It's true, yeah. Yeah. And the more you want it, sometimes the further away it gets.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that, what's it called? Like that, like, push effect, or like, where it's like, the more you try to get something, it's exactly what you said, and then, like, when you stop trying to get it,
Yep.
it just comes.
There it is.
I think it's like the cat effect or something where it's like, you pet a cat, and it won't want to be pet by you, but then once you leave it alone, it'll come
back.
you.
Yeah. That's very true. We have 2 cats.
I have a cat as well.
Nice.
So, you ready?
Ready.
All right, Patrick. Tell me how you got into this whole creativity world and why it matters.
Good question. It was always part of who I was, as far back as I can remember. I have memory of doing these really, really small watercolors on the kitchen table.
Yeah.
And I was probably 3. And my mom kept a few of them. I could have been younger, I don't know. But they were very interesting to kind of reflect on after growing up. And then I was always drawing, I getting little scraps of paper and drawing for as long as I can remember. And about age 10, I started to get serious and started to teach myself, I started looking at objects and trying to draw them. So
Mm-hmm.
plants or, a potted plant or whatever. So, and, and that just took off. My mom was aware enough to buy me some drawing pads. So,
Mm-hmm.
these are, the first ones were kind of small, and I asked for bigger ones.
Yeah.
The large ones were maybe 24 by 20 inches, 18 by 24, somewhere in there. So
Mm-hmm.
a decent size for a 12-year-old, right? And
Mm.
I filled those up. I think I have 5 or 6 of those from my early teens. And then for some reason, I just thought, wow, maybe I could paint some of these
Mm-hmm.
drawings. And around 14 or 15, I got a small set of acrylic paint. It had probably 8 tubes, right? Small tubes,
Mm-hmm.
and a sketch pad. It was like a canvas paper sketch pad that you
Mm-hmm.
could just pull the sheets out and paint. And I made probably maybe 10 of those. They were
Mm-hmm.
eight by tens. And then I uh, was by then in high school, and my first art teacher, serious art teacher, said, you should stretch a canvas. So I stretched a canvas, and that was the beginning of painting. Yeah. So I
Um.
kind of self-taught myself, and then
Mm.
when I started painting in high school, I made probably 30 paintings, stretched canvases, and the smallest one was sort of my first one, which was 30 inches by 25 inches or so. And then I made a painting 7 feet by 4 feet in high school, which was
Mm.
kind
That's
of
huge.
out there for
Yeah.
kind of a working class poor kid from the outskirts of Omaha, Nebraska.
Yeah. How do you? Because the art world is. There's a reason why artists are called starving artists.
It's true.
So how did you, I guess, transition from expressing your creativity, doing what you're passionate about, and then I guess try to make a living out of it?
Right. And you ask, usually when you ask any, uh, I'll stick with painters, but it's across the board: poets,
Yeah.
musicians, whomever, uh, whatever genre of art you talk about. they'll they'll say, in for sure, in their 20s or into their 30s,
Mm-hmm.
they worked all kinds of wild, different, crazy part-time jobs.
Mm.
Sometimes full-time jobs. It depends
Mm-hmm.
on the kind of the person they are. But for me, I tended to like flexibility and would have 2, 3, 4 part-time jobs to patch together a lifestyle of being able to pay rent and have a studio if it wasn't in the house that I was living in. Usually, it was in the house,
Mm-hmm.
in the garage, or in a bedroom or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a matter of there's a different story for every artist out there, but often we have had many part-time jobs. For me, it was everything
Yeah.
from I drove a school bus for a while. I worked in Head Start classrooms for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I I taught martial arts and art in the Seattle Recreation Department for
Mm-hmm.
years. I did artist in residencies in Seattle, the
Mm.
Seattle area. So there's just lots of irons in the fire, so to speak, to buy paint and canvas and brushes.
Yeah. So where are you now with that?
Well, it is an ongoing process for sure. There are ups and downs. I'm working on some projects right now that with a friend. Actually, he's actually back in Colorado. My wife and I moved back to the kind of the home, uh, our home, or where we grew up,
Mm-hmm.
about a few years ago, about 3.5 years ago. And
Mm-hmm.
but we were in Colorado for quite a while. And a friend out there, he is superb at marketing and coming up with entrepreneurial ideas. And he said, Patrick, we're gonna figure some things out. And so he and I are doing some entrepreneurial collaborations that are looking to be going in a good direction. So
Do you still have a day job or
nope,
no?
nope, I haven't had an actual day job. The last full time job that I had for about 4 years, but it was as a sculpting supervisor. I was doing finishing
Mm.
work for a sculptor. So
It's still art related.
it was art related.
Yeah.
So that was I haven't that not art related was 1993
Oh wow.
was the last time I had a regular job.
Yeah.
My wife and I have a nonprofit that we've had
Mm.
for 25 years now, and
Yeah.
but that's it's arts and education and healing. So it's it's in our field of what our passions are. So
If there was somebody listening to this right now and they're a quote starving artist and they're trying to make a living out of it and they want to quit their day job that they hate and they want to pursue this full time, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to have a plan of transitioning from the day job to full-time art, and not to just not don't jump out of the plane and without
Without
the
a
parachute.
parachute.
Yeah. So uh, be very strategic about your process, and have
Yeah.
build up your portfolio
Mm.
to where you feel, if you're a painter, really dive into what your passion is, what your vision is of what you want to paint and what you want to say, and put a huge amount of focus into that. Build that up.
Mm-hmm.
Photograph your work. Have it photographed well, and and know that it takes uh, many rejections to, if
Mm.
you want to get into a gallery. There are alternatives to galleries now. There's quite a few online platforms that will that have a lot of.
I think Etsy's one of the best.
Etsy's a great one. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
just some really uh, good places for folks to get their work out. I put my work out on Instagram. I
Mm.
have a photography section. I'm
Mm.
I'm not a professional photographer, but I love photography. So, and
Yeah.
I post a photo every day, and then I have I call morning meditation drawings. So
Mm.
every morning I make a drawing, and before I journal, and then I post that drawing, and I'm I'm over like 2,500 drawings.
What did you draw today?
I drew. I'll show you.
Can you show me?
Yeah, that is that is
What is
today's.
that?
It's a circle and a square, and and then I make marks.
So
So,
are you into like the abstracts,
uh,
like abstract art?
only when I do my morning meditation drawings.
Oh, only for the mornings.
Yeah. So I'm just beginning to do portrait work after
Yeah.
50 some years of painting.
Oh
I,
wow.
yeah, I thought my wife, when we first met 25 years ago, she said, "Oh, I think you should do portraits." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. Those are,
Portraits are like there's this huge TikToker. You probably heard of him. He's from New York
hmm,
and he's like in his early 20s and he kind of blew up, but all he does is portraits and he does like a um he blew up by drawing random people on like the subway
mm-hmm,
and it was so good and then he would give them the portrait and like show their reaction and they'd be like so amazed and it like went viral and he has like 50 million like followers now.
oh my
He
God,
has yeah, he's like the definition of like a successful artist, I'd say. But it took many years and like you, he like started young and
mm,
he he wanted to use his art as a way to get out of the I guess poverty that he was living in like
sure,
the slums of New York. And yeah, and that just shows like the power of social media. But
absolutely,
like doing stuff like that can also help like artists. I think it's a great form of marketing, um, which you definitely need as an artist.
definitely.
Do you have any works that you're like super proud of?
Oh yeah, I have. Yes, there's
Do you have
definitely.
like one in particular?
That's what I was on a program last week, and uh, the host asked, and I gave sort of a
Mm-hmm.
sort of a cliche answer, and I said
Mm-hmm.
it's the one that I just finished, and I did this, I which I hadn't done before,
Mm-hmm.
and so way down,
What's that?
it's hard to see. Way down at the end of the studio is a portrait of General Washington
Mm-hmm.
that I used a painting that was done in 1791 of him, and
Mm-hmm.
then I redid the entire background. So I made everything up. I painted that the flag, the colonial flag with the 13
Mm-hmm.
stars in it, and everything else I made up from objects that he had when he was at war
Mm-hmm.
and during the Revolutionary War, and that's part of the project that I'm starting this series that I'm calling the Brothers in Arms series.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm constructing portraits of the next one I'm doing is of Thomas Jefferson
Mm-hmm.
in his study at night writing the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
And that one will be, there's no painting like that, so I'm going to make everything up. I'm going to use his study wherever I'll research and find out wherever he wrote
Mm-hmm.
he wrote that, and then just build the painting from that.
Is there any work of art that you've had the most success with or gotten the most?
Sure, yeah. There's the high point
Yeah.
of sales is a painting of an iris that
Oh,
is 8 feet by 8 feet.
just like a
So
giant eye.
no, an flower iris.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
the giant eye would be very cool. Yeah,
Well, there's
I may
inspiration
do
right
that.
there.
Yeah, yeah. That is a great idea. Yeah, yeah.
I
An
was
eight
like,
by
wait,
eight
an
foot iris.
iris?
Yeah, that would be impressive. Yeah, uh,
No, for real. Yeah.
yeah. And that is in a hospital in Seattle, in the Harborview Medical Center.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that
Have you
was
heard of Oh yeah, go ahead.
uh, $32,000 for that piece. So
Oh wow.
that's, yeah, that's a significant. milestone for me as a as
as an
a
artist,
yeah, as an artist.
creative, whatever you want to say.
Yes. Yeah.
Have you heard of Greta Thunberg?
Mm-hmm.
Her, like, her pieces of art are crazy.
Really, I had no idea that she was
What?
making art.
Greta, or not? Wait, no, it's not Greta Thunberg. Who am I thinking of? She, maybe it's not her. That's like a Twitter person. Um, she recreates like Elon Musk, for example. She drew Elon Musk on a giant scale,
Hmm.
but then she, like, I don't know the name for this type of art, but it's like collage art
Mm-hmm.
where it's it's kind of like so many smaller pieces, but then it creates a face.
Sure.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yep. Totally.
She does that on like a giant canvas, like a canvas you could like basically like a human size, like 5 foot, 6 foot canvas, and a giant. It's like a giant portrait. I wish I could show you, but yeah, those that art is like I would buy that type of art, and I think she like sells out of those
Very cool.
as well. So yeah, you can you can make a living doing art.
It's true.
So my first like real question is, why is creativity a superpower to you?
Yeah, that's. I love that question, and I saw it on when I was looking up. I didn't. Did I did I write that to you, or did you tune
I
into
don't think
that?
so.
Okay.
I usually just go through your like I do research. I
Excellent.
I don't just look at like your bio. I also like I watched your TED talk.
Super.
I
Thank
looked
you.
on your Instagram. I try to do as much research as I can like within an hour or two. Like it only takes me about an hour or two to
Nice.
to get all the questions and research done.
Very
But
cool.
yeah.
Yeah. So superpower. I totally believe it's a superpower. It is. Creativity is literally how we learn.
Mm-hmm.
So learning is essential to being alive and growing. And is creativity, play, and imagination are what we use to learn everything. It's how we learn to move, talk, read, play. That's how we tune into how to do things. We and as a power, creativity is at the top of necessary human endeavors. Uh, it's what moves us forward. It's our I believe it's our first language. This
Creativity.
creativity, that we're curious, and it we use our creativity to then learn how to speak, and then learn how to write. We how to learn anything. We use the way we put the world together when we were literally infants, newborns, or we don't have any spoken language at that moment. Everything is
Mm-hmm.
we're 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 like sponges, and
Yeah.
we're just absorbing everything, and we're watching and looking and hearing and feeling and tasting and smelling, and it's everything is new, and we're starting to put it together, and we put it together through our curiosity and the development of our essentially our personality. You were curious about different things than I was when we were both a month old, and then when we were six
Mm-hmm.
months old, all that led to different places, and then that led to new places. It's a superpower
Yeah.
for for those amazing reasons that I I do not think we could be human beings without our creativity.
So, what is creativity to you?
That's a great question. I spent years ago when I was writing the manuscript that I'm still working on. I I thought, okay, I gotta define creativity, and I worked for like 2 hours on trying to figure it out. I'd type, edit, type, edit, and
Yeah.
nothing was really working. And I looked online and see what other people said, and everything didn't seem very useful. And I
Mm.
thought, okay, I'm gonna write an email to my wife and say, I need a definition of creativity. And literally 5 minutes later, she sends me an email back. And my theory is that she didn't see my email for about 4 minutes and then saw the email, wrote out this definition of creativity, and then sent it back to me. And I have it right here. She said,
What is it?
this is it. Creativity, the indwelling spirit experienced as feelings and emotions, which must be expressed in all of its genius, originality, and daring. Creativity requires immense vulnerability, deep listening to the currents of the invisible, and a radical loyalty to oneself.
Hmm.
And that's what I
That
did.
makes sense.
I was like,
Yeah.
wow, that's it.
So she wrote that to you?
She wrote that to me. And just like she's a writer. She has
Uh,
that kind of awareness and
that
and
explains it.
yeah, and consciousness. Yeah.
That's why it sounds good.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah.
So, how do we? My next question is, how do we, I guess, express it more?
Right. I I'm working on sort of a clarification of creativity, that I believe that there are two kinds of creativity. There's what I call generalized creativity and specialized creativity. We use
Mm-hmm.
we use the generalized creativity all the time. Even, what you do is
Mm-hmm.
massive high level generalized creativity in being a host for a podcast. You have to do multiple
Really?
things on the fly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to do the research. You have to think about questions, think about the flow, think about what could be next. Those are those are higher level to me generalized creative processes that
What
you
would lower level be?
uh choosing the the hoodie that you put on this morning. you know
Okay.
I mean, you had to choose. It could have been this one, could have been that one.
Now that one thing for me is I don't like to have like a huge wardrobe,
Mm-hmm.
so that eliminates like I like to be minimalist when it comes to my wardrobe. I like fashion, like I do like fashion,
Mm-hmm.
but give me like a plain white tee or a hoodie and some jeans, like give me that any
Right,
day.
right. Totally.
So
So
what's specialized?
so
Yeah.
specialized creativity is when we move into every from invention, innovation, to the sciences, the math,
Hmm.
and the arts. So all of those require a another level of focus and awareness that we don't necessarily need too much of with generalized creativity.
Hmm.
So specialized creativity in the arts is when you start to notice, for myself, wow, I can draw. All the kids
Uh.
in second grade, they're asking me to
Yeah.
draw what they want drawn. Or if there's
Hmm.
a class project, then if there's drawing involved, everybody would say, oh, they'd point to me. specialized creativity has a type of passion to it. It has a type of devotion that you have to be devoted to develop the specialized creativity.
Yeah.
You have to be aware of yourself to a, a, a larger degree than you would if you're doing accounting, which is has a necessary quality of generalized creativity to it. That,
Accounting.
but
Yeah.
it can't be too creative, because then you might get in trouble. So
Mm.
so the specialized is a deeper commitment to a vision, an inner vision that you're wanting to express. Like the young guy doing the portraits in New York.
Mm.
He has a vision. He has a passion. He has a dedication, and
Mm.
he has a. I have had, when I started painting, for whatever reason, I thought to myself, the next painting that I make, I want to I want to do better. I want to find out
Yeah.
more. I want to strive towards something more expressive and more meaningful and more significant than the painting before. Even if I liked the painting before, but I had this feeling I can do better.
I think it's like becoming a master of your craft
Truly,
and
the
always and become and staying a lifelong learner in the process.
absolutely super
Even
important.
when you reach that masterful part.
There's always more mountains in the
Yeah.
distance. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's what it's about.
Totally, I
So,
totally agree.
what about people that don't think they're creative? What, like the analytical thinkers, the logical thinkers, the people that don't have creative jobs? Where do they fit in?
Well, they fit in because when they were 5, they were creative.
Mm.
So all of us as children are super creative. I mean, think about it. You get 10 5-year olds together, and they can be 10 5-year olds from different countries from all over the
Yeah.
world, and none of them can speak to each other. You put them out on a playground, and they'll be playing in 10 seconds. They will literally invent a game that is, you put a ball out there with them, or put something else, put something, some paintbrushes even,
Sticks.
or sticks, or yeah,
Sticks
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
dirt.
yeah, totally. They will invent a game.
Mm.
They will playfully engage. So a person who's 30 years old and is an accountant, I'm definitely not bashing accountants. I'm just
What do
saying,
you have against accountants?
yeah, they have a challenging time, because it's all about the numbers. But
Yeah.
they all were super into something playful when they were children. and
Mm.
and I encourage people to journal, if they want
Mm-hmm.
to start to be, if they want to reintroduce and restore their creativity. One of the first things I ask people to do is go out, buy a journal, and and the journal is good in general for people, just as
Mm-hmm.
a place to put their feelings down, to put their thoughts down, to put
Awareness. Yeah.
awarenesses, a place that they can sort out ideas, a place where
Mm-hmm.
they can reflect on their relationships that are important to them, or if they're
Mm-hmm.
having a struggle in some area, they can work that out. But a journal is also a place you can do all that, and then you can have a little section where you write about your creativity. And
Mm.
I ask people to reflect on, when you were 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, what is one of the things that you were always playing? and then
Mm.
to sort of improvise from there, to ask questions. Why was I into that? And why did I enjoy it so much? What was it about that was so much fun? And
Mm.
I think if it was a video game,
Yeah.
then I would say ask questions, still ask questions about it. But I want people to think of things that were going outside and picking up some sticks and saying, "Oh, these are lightsabers," or whatever it might be, or
Mm.
or uh, to look at things in their life where they were not prompted by a prop to play a certain way.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Or maybe like ask them why they enjoyed it.
Exactly.
Like
And
if
if
it
they,
was,
it,
yeah.
totally, if
Like
that's
if it was a video game,
right,
like why did like, because there's so many different video games. You know, there's racing games, there's fighting games, there's
totally,
adventure games. So it's like maybe if it was a racing game, why is that all you played?
right,
Or is it an adventure game? Why is that all you played at
totally,
the adventure game? You know, there's different.
exactly,
I think you could ask yourself that as well. Like why was I more into racing and
totally.
not adventure? Why,
And that's going to give them uh,
some
clues,
clarity.
some clarity,
Yeah.
some clues, and then I want people to follow. If there is something that they come across, that to follow that, to
Hmm.
ask themselves, how have I done that? If I'm 30 and I was doing that when I was 5, what is there something for those 25 years that connects together that I
Do
can
you
reach
think
back and
do you think there's any benefit to that?
oh
Or
yeah.
do you think people are fine just being an accountant and
Well,
not and not ever needing to express, like, what would you tell the person that says I don't need to express my creative side, I don't
mm,
feel like a creative person, I don't have that urge? What about that?
sure, that's a good question. One, I'm I'm careful not to get people to think that I'm wanting them to be an artist of any kind
Hmm.
while they're tuning into their creativity.
Hmm.
So, and that's challenging because I'm an artist, and if I'm talking to
Yeah,
people about being creative, then they're in some ways they're assuming,
that's
oh,
like the most relatable thing you can,
totally, it's the most
yeah,
relatable, and it's the easiest for all of us to see.
an example of, yeah.
Oh, they're creative. They just made that painting, or they just made that piece of music, or
Hmm.
that poem, or whatever it might be. So, I assist people in seeing that touching or restoring their creativity is not necessarily about being an artist, but it
Hmm.
is about having access to an ability. Again, circling back around, having access to a superpower that they will actually, I feel, be able to do tasks in their life that become, not that they become easy. That's not certainly devoting oneself to a craft. The craft never really becomes easy because there's always something more that you can become good at. That's challenging. Like for me, like doing portraits. That's
Hmm.
super, has been super amazing, fun, and incredibly challenging. So when I talk to people about reconnecting to their creativity, restoring
Hmm.
their natural creative qualities, I believe it will assist them in how they approach a relationship, how they relate to their significant other, or their kids, or their parents, or their friends. They may after doing some work and contemplating and trying doing some exercises, they may
Mm-hmm.
relate to it and say, well, I could suggest this, that we could go to hear some music, which is not necessarily specialized creativity. It is for the musicians, but it's inside the creative sphere, so to speak, that
Mm.
you're sitting listening to some jazz with a friend, and you've never gone to listen to any kind of music with that friend before, and then suddenly you're sitting there, and the two of you start talking, and you both realize that, wow, I didn't know that you were into music or into jazz,
Into
or
music.
yeah, or probably,
Who's
yeah,
not into music?
yeah, I know that's true. Uh, so that would have been an example with painting, or going to a gallery or a museum.
Yeah.
So, or into saxophone, or
Well, I
something.
think I think what you're getting at and what I was thinking of when you were explaining that is when you break it down, what is creativity? It starts with create, right?
Mm,
Create. You create something, and then I think when you break it down even further, you create something every day that moves you in the direction of what you want to do and express yourself and what you love and are passionate about. So you're creating something that you're passionate about that you have an urge to express.
totally. It's your podcast, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, totally. Yeah, I can't remember. Oh, it was. I think it was at the beginning. It might have been at the beginning with Walt Morgan, I
Hmm.
think, that he and you were talking about how you got into
Oh yeah.
doing the podcasts, and that was
Yeah.
fabulous. It was beautiful. It was really, that was heartfelt and deep, and just exactly what you described, and it is
Yeah.
creative.
No, yeah. I think I found podcasting really expresses my creative side for sure.
Totally.
I mean, I like facts and logic and analytics, but it doesn't light me up in the same way. And I found specialized creativity in like the editing part. Like when
Hmm.
I'm editing content for social
Nice.
media, um, you really can. It's like a movie. You watch a movie, and it's a work of art. I found that when I edit content for social media, so it's fun.
Totally. Yeah. I can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And my the first, because you put them together,
Mhm.
my sense is that when you do go see a film, there's something in you that is more aware of how they're putting the scenes together with
Oh yeah,
respect
yeah.
to editing. Like, yeah, I can see why they did that. That was great.
Well, also I'm in part-time film school
Very cool.
to help me, I guess, master the craft of storytelling and
Mm,
also creativity. Um, I definitely agree with you 100% that creativity is a superpower and it feels good to express it.
totally. Totally. Have you? This is, since you mentioned it.
Yeah.
Have you watched? I I just, as a suggestion.
Yeah.
It's obscure somewhat, but watch Sergei Eisenstein's Battleship Potemkin.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah,
Battleship Potemkin.
yeah. I'm pretty sure that's the name of it. Eisenstein is the film director. It's a silent film from, I think, 1920 something, either
Mhm.
the late teens, or I think it's the early 20s. But it has been voted the greatest film ever produced more times than even Citizen Kane. But I say this
Oh yeah, I
because,
heard of that too.
yeah, watch that too. But the editing, these guys basically were inventing film
Yeah.
when they were doing
Yeah,
this
because it's
work.
still new. Like
Oh
all
yeah,
of that was
totally
still
new.
new.
So the editing is remarkable and sophisticated and gripping and awesome.
Yeah.
And it's a film that you can take a still out of any portion and it would be a beautiful black and white photograph. It's a remarkable film.
I have to
Yeah.
go check it out now.
And if you uh, how you will start seeing references to in other films from that Battleship Potemkin film.
Hmm.
So people so director geeks that
Yeah.
they will take a shot and
Well,
do
they
their own
say
thing with it.
yeah, what's that? There's like a quote, it's like steal like an artist.
Yeah, there's a I think it's a
It's like
Picasso quote. Uh,
you you take inspiration from other artists that you're inspired by. You may use a piece of their craft and then you make it your own.
totally. Yeah.
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 I do that all the time with editing.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Yeah. Excellent.
But I wanted to like further break down your um I guess definition of how we do everything, the play,
Mm,
imagination, and creativity. And I have two quotes for this. So the first quote is by Dr. Seuss, and he
mm,
says, creativity is like nonsense. It wakes up your brain cells, and fantasy, having a fantasy, is a necessary ingredient in living. It's a way of looking at life through the wrong end of a telescope, which is what I do every day, and that enables you to laugh at life's realities. What do you
super.
think about that?
Oh, fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was his quote on creativity.
Yeah, I love that. And it's very, very true. It assists people in. I think what's really great about that is that it encompasses both sides. It encompasses the necessity to be light with life
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, and and see the wackiness or the humor or the absurdity or
Mm-hmm.
just how crazy life can be, how funny life can be at times.
Mm-hmm.
But that gives you also the ability to appreciate how intense life is and how challenging it is and uh, how hardships flow in and out of life,
Mm-hmm.
how grief is intense but necessary for us to make passage with and through. The
Mm-hmm.
lightness gives us a perspective on the hardship, and the hardship we also are able to keep the lightness in our
Yeah.
awareness. Also, yeah, it works both ways,
So
and he was a
now that
master at
you're,
that.
yeah, that 100%. So, I mean, now that you're talking about emotions, where does creativity fit in expressing your all of your emotions? Sad, grief,
it
angry.
Yeah, it has to have creativity necessitates all of them,
Mm-hmm.
and of course not all at once. That's that
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't
You're gonna
who
have
knows if
all the
that's
emotions
possible.
all
Right,
at
right.
once.
Maybe
I don't think so.
you'd be frozen. Nothing could
Yeah.
happen. Yeah,
You'd be like a computer
right,
with a virus, like
right, exactly. So create the best of creative works in that realm of specialized creativity have an emotional quality to them. They
mm,
not only is it that the person who was making whatever it is, let's
Mm-hmm.
say it's a painting, not only have they been able to be honest with themselves while making it and allow all of their feelings to be happening, because we
Mm-hmm.
can't, I'm sure it's happened at some point that a person has made, let's say, a painting, and
Mm-hmm.
they were astronomically, their purpose for the painting was sadness, and they were astronomically sad every single microsecond that they made the piece.
Mm.
That would be remarkable, and maybe that has happened. Maybe it's happened a lot. I have never
Mm-hmm.
been able to do that. If I'm making a piece that has a quality of sadness to it, every time I'm working on the painting, I may think of that
Sad
those
moment.
feelings or that sad moment while I'm doing it, but I'm doing so many different other things. I'm mixing paint, I'm choosing the right brush, I'm whatever it might be.
Have you ever cried while painting?
Yes, I've cried at painting, and I've cried. I think twice. I know one painting, and it was weird because it was a Picasso painting called Weeping Woman, and
Oh, wow.
and it was in the Museum of Modern Art. And it was in the same room as virtually the one of the most famous pieces that he ever made, the Demoiselles
Mm-hmm.
d'Avignon. that that is a monumental piece, and I'm standing in front of this little tiny painting called Weeping Woman. I think he did it probably in the 1930s,
Yeah.
and it is a brutally tough,
Mm.
harsh,
Mm-hmm.
aggressive painting. It's not a happy painting. It's not a pleasant painting to look at, but it has so much grief and sorrow in it that
You can like feel it
you
through
can
the
feel it.
through
Yeah,
the art.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
So,
yes, and I've, I can't, I more than, certainly more than once when I've been
mm.
working, painting or
What
drawing.
about angry? Have
Oh
you ever
yeah.
angry painted?
that's a great that's a great question. Yeah, probably, but I don't think I saved those.
you, you paint them and then you burn them.
Yeah, I did. I burned a whole bunch of paintings about 20 years ago
Oh, really?
at my when uh, my mom was still alive, and I had a big bonfire. It was probably
Mm.
toxic as crazy. They live out in the country, so
Oh, yeah.
it was relatively safe. But I burned a whole stack of paintings, and part of it, some of them I wish I still
You
had,
didn't.
but yeah, but that's okay. And I recycled a pickup truck full of old drawings. So
Mm.
literally, probably 10,000 drawings
Oh, wow.
I sent to the recycle. It was a big purge, and it felt good. I mean, and
Yeah, there's
those,
something liberating
yeah,
about
yeah, it
it.
was totally liberating. Yeah, yeah,
I mean, that's why they have an event called Burning Man.
totally. Yep.
But
Yes.
the second part of that was imagination.
Mm.
And this quote is from Einstein, the guy that you think of a logical scientist, analytical thinker. He had a famous quote in an interview where he says, I am enough of an artist to draw freely upon my imagination. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the entire world.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is that he went to a school his last year in high school. He went to a
Mm-hmm.
school in Switzerland that I am I have a very close friend who's from Switzerland, and so he could tell us how to pronounce the name of this town, but it's spelled Arau. So
A R A R A.
Arau, some I have no idea.
Oh,
But he was in
okay.
this town when he was in high school, and the school he went to was a school that was connected to a Swiss educator named Johann Pestalozzi. So there's a
Mm.
bunch of Swiss folks that have very Italian sounding names because their southern border is right on Italy. So
Mm.
Pestalozzi was this guy's name. He was brilliant. He was way ahead of his time, and part of his vision for education was to allow the children a chunk of time during the day
Mm.
to use their imaginations. Basically, it was daydreaming was part of their curriculum. So Einstein was very uh, influenced by that exercise of,
Yeah.
of spending significant time daydreaming. And that's what he was able to do at that Swiss patent office that he worked with when he was working on his special relativity that he published in
Oh
1905.
yeah, there's
Yeah,
yeah, there's a great story about that where he was just like downtown in his like studio or something, and he like looked outside the window of a guy standing on a tall ladder, cleaning the windows or something, and that's where it came to him like, wait, if he fell and like the
oh,
gravity and
right, right.
like
Yeah,
the forces, that's how he, I guess, discovered that
yeah, it's
using his creativity
totally.
and
And his imagination.
imagination of the
Yeah,
guy falling. Yeah.
totally.
So where does, I guess I don't have one for play.
Mm,
That's up to you.
yeah.
Where does
Well,
play fit in?
play is there's a psychologist, and I don't know where he teaches, but his name is Peter Gray, and
Mm-hmm.
he has studied. He went back and looked through all the studies that happened in the late 1800s and early 20th century
Mm-hmm.
of people who were studying folks that had never been connected to the modern world. So these are indigenous people that haven't been disturbed, and that was there's a group in off the coast of India still, and there's
Yeah,
some
I know
groups
what you're
in
talking
yeah, yeah,
about.
and
They're
some
like hostile now.
oh yeah, they don't like any, and India thankfully said just let them be,
Leave them alone. Yeah.
leave them alone. So what Peter Gray found in all this literature, and then he interviewed folks that were still alive that did the
Mm-hmm.
research, was that the children in all of
Mm-hmm.
these cultures, they could be in the Amazon, in Africa, in Australia, wherever, in Indonesia, there were a lot there. All of them had several things in common, but one of the things in common was that their children had zero structure. He said the
Mm.
only thing that any of the cultures had that were off limits was if the hunters used poison to hunt their food source. So
Mm.
the adults kept the poison
Away
away
from.
from the children, from especially the young children. But the children could play with the knives and the spears and the arrows, and they could play with fire. They could play with anything.
Mm-hmm.
And when the adults would go off and hunt and gather and leave the children to do whatever they were going to do
To
and
play.
to play. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what they did. And what did they play? They played hunting and gathering. They played
Mm.
how do you track an animal? And there were 16-year-olds that weren't quite old enough ish. I'm making that number up, right? It could be
Mm.
14, it could be 18, who knows?
Teens. Yeah.
Teens that were still with the kids, the younger ones, and so they would invent games. They would play
Mm.
hunting. They would play gathering. They would play all sorts of things. And Peter Gray was also connected to they're called democratic schools. His
Mm-hmm.
kids went to Sudbury. I think it's in Massachusetts, but it's an open curriculum. There are
Mm,
adults there, and they assist the kids if they have questions, but the kids can do anything they want. Essentially,
mm.
imitating what all of us did as when were in hunter-gatherer uh, communities. So it's kind of natural for us to do that.
It's our
Uh,
human instinct.
so it's our human instinct to play, and also then to use our imagination and to use our creativity. So
Mm.
play is play goes as far back as we can imagine, literally.
So how does an adult play?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I think we can see how inventive adults are in their play. Some of
Yeah,
it's
innovation,
innovation,
tech.
totally tech, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, and that is immensely playful for a lot of folks that they just love to code, and that is
Mm.
that is extremely inventive.
Yeah.
We see how people who continue to play sports are
Mm.
using that as a way to be inventive. When you're
Mm-hmm.
when you're on the basketball court, or your softball or baseball or tennis
Yeah.
or whatever it is, you may not be in the moment trying to think of how do I
Yeah,
invent a
yeah.
new shot, but suddenly you do something and you're like, whoa, that was cool. I got to remember.
Yeah, it's like unscripted.
Yes,
It's like unscripted play in life.
exactly. And that's what is
Yeah.
most creative and most useful to learning, is when it's unscripted. And that's why I brought up the aside about a video game. And video games, they're
Mm.
not bad. There's lots of positive uh, attributes that come from playing a video game or playing a scripted, like, this is kind of in between me
Rules,
and
like
you.
rules.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And those are fine because they teach kids how to negotiate. They teach them how to one, to follow a rule, and what it means to cheat, and what it means to play fair,
And
and all
healthy
those things, and a
competition,
healthy
yeah.
competition, exactly. So I believe that we continue to play sports because of that part of the process, which is playful.
That yeah, the
Yeah,
human instinct to
right.
play.
And I believe, it was funny when I said that earlier about music, but I think that's why we listen to music, is because there is a playful quality
Mm.
to it. That's surprising and inventive, and we're always interested in hearing something new. We just went to it's
Yeah.
called Bagels and Bach Sunday, and we met a guy.
I love that name.
Yeah, it's a good name. Then Bach was played, and they had bagels, and it was a guy that we had seen before, busking downtown in the old market here in Omaha, playing cello, and I assumed that he did other cello playing, but we heard
Hmm.
him and his original cello piece, a few original cello pieces, and he was playing with his wife, who plays the oboe, and those two instruments
Mm.
together were just gorgeous. And it was playful, it was exciting, and they did an arrangement of, I think, like three Irish songs, because it was
Hmm.
Patrick's Day. So, and that was
Oh
inventive
yeah,
and creative.
that just passed. Huh?
Yeah. So I think we have ways in which we're always going after something playful,
Like subconsciously, maybe.
subconsciously, even in like this. What we're
Yeah.
doing right now is a playful process of having a conversation. Good conversations are playful. i don't know where
Mm.
I don't know where you're going to go. You don't know where I'm going to go, but right, but we're getting somewhere. We're in this process of discovering and being
No, that
being playful and
there's
open.
there's definitely a beauty to that, and I recently listened to a Jordan Peterson podcast where he explained that that's something you don't get out of like purely written books.
Mm-mm.
You don't have that because when you write a book, you want to have it as planned out and outlined, and the stories there, and there you don't have that beauty of um, unscripted discussions
Right.
in a
Totally.
book when you're writing it. And he explained that there is a beauty to that,
Totally.
and I think that taps into our playful side
Absolutely.
as adults, no matter what age you are.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I heard him speak about how he has he has a certain amount of his material, he knows it, but he talked once
Mm,
about when he gets on stage, he's using those moments to really figure out what he thinks about some of these topics. So he's
like a
using,
reflection,
right,
yeah.
he's using, and I love this idea of basically getting together with people and talk about being super vulnerable of, I don't know exactly what I'm going to talk about, but
Yeah.
I have 1,000 people here, and I got to come up with something decent.
And then it just, and exactly what you said too, it gets harder, I guess, because I've been envisioning my future of my podcast, and I obviously want it to be as successful as it can be, and I've been envisioning that success, and that success comes with scrutiny.
Totally.
And I think it takes away that authenticity
Mm,
because let's say, I don't know, in 5 years I get 1 million followers, subscribe, whatever the success is. There's a form of holding back
mm,
when you're at that level of scrutiny
mm,
in the limelight in the media.
mm.
Do you have any advice for that?
Advice is tricky.
Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
Like,
my
if
thoughts.
let's say you as an artist just exploded, like let's say this series that you're making right now, the
Mm,
Arms, Brother
yeah,
in Arms,
yeah.
let's say it just went viral, and you've gotten scrutiny on both sides. You've gotten
Mm,
good
mm-hmm.
and bad and controversial topics. How would you show up in that way?
Sure, that's a great. I love that question, and I love the optimism for both of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, blessings to you for that to
Yeah.
happen. So I feel what has guided me through my life is to to have that kind of scrutiny, but to honor what is passionate in my heart.
Mm,
So let's say I do 10 of these brothers in arms paintings, and they go super viral and super popular, and my heart is looking in another direction
mm,
in 2 years.
mm,
I think it's more, even though that would be challenging and possibly not a good business idea, and not that the paintings would and the prints would not be available, right? In some ways, they would still.
You'd still be
And maybe
selling pieces.
let's even put it more intense and say, okay, I decided that I I don't want to have any of that out in the public anymore.
Mm,
That would be a giant shift or a change of heart or something. I don't know. I may, for all intents and purposes, that's what I would do. If I
like
was
take a hiatus.
take a hiatus, and do more self reflection and
Mm,
really tune into, well, what are the positives, what are the negatives. So I think it's essential to have the scrutiny and to have the self-reflection, and 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 use those who are closest to you to as a sounding board, to, hey, what do you think about this idea? And seek some mentors. You're at
Yeah.
a excuse me, you're at a place now that you have a decent amount of experience with doing this, and you can reach out to somebody who's been podcasting, especially reach out to Alex Sanfilippo. He'd be
Oh yeah,
he'd
yeah.
be a great. He is super generous. He sends me emails just to, like, checking in, say, hey Patrick, you got a message on your your board. When
No, yeah.
yeah. So he's amazing. So him or someone else that you think, wow, I should just reach out to
Yeah.
that person and ask a few questions, and just for a little input.
I think my first thought process and the way you elaborated it, my mind goes to the greats in history.
Sure.
They, in their time, social media wasn't a thing, but
Mm-mm.
we still know them today.
Right.
And even, I guess, the most prominent example is Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
He faced scrutiny, and he also faced and changed the history of religion for
Right.
Christians.
Totally.
So I think it goes back to that reflective process, like you were saying, and then what's your deep intention behind what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
If you intended to have a net positive in the world, then you should be okay with that.
Right. Sure. Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah. It's a wrap. No, no, you're totally correct. That's
That's just where my thought process goes, and it doesn't fully nothing fully prepares you for that moment. Like, I've already dealt with some trolls online,
sure.
YouTube, and the comment section, and yeah, that's where my mind goes. It's like, well, my whole mission with this podcast is to have a net positive and to help people express their purpose, passions, and live a more peaceful and joyous life. So that's my intention, and if you troll me, then that's your intention.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that it's best to stay as far away from them as possible.
But that's the challenge when it comes to being viral.
That's for sure. That's when you can hire somebody to deal with it.
Oh, hire the people to manage your
Yeah,
social
the
accounts.
the anti-troll patrol.
But Pat, I'd like to lead into our closing segment.
Sure.
I appreciate you, and I'm super grateful to have had you on. So this game is completely random. There's about like 200 cards in here.
Super.
So the first prompt card is share something nostalgic. Let me see.
Hmm.
Okay, this is a good one. Can you read that?
Just a second. Oh, interesting. So, do I combine those two?
Yeah, yeah. You
Okay.
combine them. Yeah. So today I care a lot less about something that you were nostalgic about.
Well, I think I've been thinking about this, and it's connected to some things that we've gotten into
Covered.
a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I care a lot less about being in a gallery,
Mm.
and I'm nostalgic. I have different levels of nostalgia about wanting, especially when I was in my 20s and into my
Yeah.
30s, of really, really wanting to be in a gallery, and I care less and less about that now. I'm much more interested in connecting to people who are deeply interested in my work, that
Mm-hmm.
are willing to ask questions and have conversations if possible. I'm certainly open to that, uh, and and less interested in going through all the hoops and jumps that are necessary to be in one or more or many galleries.
Mm-hmm.
And galleries are a great idea. Galleries are super. They're fabulous. They do great things for the art world. They do
Mm-hmm.
great things for artists. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I, I, in the biggest picture, it's not that I dislike galleries. I think they could be designed in a more beneficial way for the artist,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to 50-50. That's kind of the basic rate, that the
Yeah.
gallery gets 50 and the artist gets 50. Some galleries take 60% and the artist gets 40%.
Mm.
Uh, and to some degree that's totally understandable, because there's a brick and mortar
It's like
building,
marketing. Yeah.
marketing, exactly. If all those things are done really well for each of the artists in the gallery group.
Mm-hmm.
So I look back and think, oh, I probably could have done with less of that then, but I'm certainly
Mm.
happy to be doing less of it now. Uh, and I, looking back in hindsight, when I wanted it so much, I wasn't making work that was at a quality that was good enough to be in a gallery or being collected,
Mm.
until uh, I had been making art for 25 years, and then I started actually to be making decent,
Yeah.
what I considered to be decent work. So
That you felt like really proud of.
yeah, that I felt this is standalone, stand up work.
Yeah.
And part of it is that's why I burned a bunch of it, you know
Mm.
that it's like, well, that's okay. Nobody needs to do that. There's a very famous 20th century artist named Jasper Johns, that when he was beginning to make a name for himself in New York galleries, he took all of his old, nobody knows what his old work looks like.
Mm.
When he found his style, his personal style, that when we look at a painting, when a geek, an art geek like me, when I see a painting, I can say, oh, that's Jasper Johns. But
Mm.
all the work that he did before, he burned, he destroyed. Nobody knows what it took for him, which in some ways is sad, because it's part of art
Yeah. You want
history.
to see like, because I feel like you should keep some of it because it shows your progress and growth
Absolutely.
and
And
evolution. Yeah.
Michelangelo did the same thing. Like,
Mm.
literally, like a week before he died, he he went out with a sledgehammer and broke the a piece that he was working on, and another Pietà, and then he burned a stack of drawings that someone said it was like 5 feet tall. It's like, no, and to him, he was in. People say that he just didn't want people to see work that wasn't at the highest level of his abilities. which was in some
Uh,
ways uh, a little egotistical. But hey,
yeah,
when you're
cause
that,
yeah,
he was
cause I feel like
86.
no, I mean I understand that, but then it's also like that just reminds me of like social media where people, at least like on Instagram and like models and other big social media people, they just put the highlight reels
Mm-hmm.
and
For sure.
not like everything. It's
Right.
just, oh, let me post when I am the best version of myself.
Right. Right.
So it's
Yeah.
just like that.
Yep. It's a commercial. It's
Yeah.
it's branding. Yeah. And to be honest, it's what's important to me is yeah, I didn't destroy all of the work that I I did before I had that fire in, I think it was in 2004. I made paintings from way back that I
Mm.
love, that I still have. We have, you know, one hanging in one of my wife's studios. You know,
Mm-hmm.
a couple actually. So so I appreciate those, and they're important for me, as you just said. They're learnings for me that I still get something out of them that I can notice, I can remember. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I remember doing that technique on that painting. That was intense. That was so
Mm-hmm.
difficult, but I learned so much by doing it, and it'll give me it gives me new sort of new inspiration, but a reminder of, oh, I can use that again. There might
Yeah.
be a place for it. So I think it's, and also not only the good things, but the headaches or the stumblings or the mistakes, if we can call it those, in a painting that I didn't have the skill yet enough to make it right
Mm-hmm.
or make it better. And they are there to show me, okay, I didn't know how to do that, but I did learn how to do that
No, that's
eventually.
exactly how I feel about like me posting my content on like YouTube. Um, like my first video isn't the greatest, but when I look back on it, it's like, oh, I've grown so much since then. I've learned so many new techniques and skills, and it's just a way to get better and reflect.
Totally. That's how we do it.
But now we'll go into the last five questions. The
Okay.
first question is, what is your biggest regret?
Ah, yeah. My and this is, well, I have one that I've thought about a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
it, I hope it doesn't sound, I don't know, shallow. Because when I'm thinking about it right now, it's like, oh my God, this why does he regret that? But I regret. I'm somewhat stalling to see if something else pops in. I mean, there are those regrets of,
Ah, just let the first one.
yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah,
let the
yeah,
first one come
yeah.
through.
So I when I was in still in college, I
Mm-hmm.
had an opportunity to go with a. I was I was a junior, I think a junior in college.
Mm-hmm.
I had my own studio on campus, which was unusual for an undergraduate uh,
Mm-hmm.
painter, and I was friends with a an MFA student that was actually from Lincoln, Nebraska. That's where I was going to school, but he had gotten a degree from Harvard in arts education and was pursuing a Master of Fine Arts in painting at the University of Nebraska. And I was working, I had taken a few classes and was doing some independent study with a art history professor.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a show in Minneapolis
Mm-hmm.
of Picasso, and I was doing an intense study of Picasso at the time. And the art history professor and the MFA student, they both asked me, would you like to go up to Minneapolis to see the show? And this is a
Mm.
show that happened in Paris, in New York,
Mm.
in uh, Minneapolis, and I believe LA.
So it's pretty big.
4 spots in the world. And this was the show, the first, they call it a retrospective, the
Mm-hmm.
first major retrospective after he had died. He died in 73, 72, 73. And
Mm-hmm.
so this was, and I have the book. It's a huge, it was a huge show. And I didn't go. I was,
Why not?
yeah, well, there was a little bit of money involved, that trying to afford it, where would, I didn't know where I was going to stay. I had a little crush on the art history professor, and so did the guy, so did the MFA student. So it was a little awkward that way. So there was just all kinds of factors
Love
that
triangle.
yeah, a 17-year-old or 18, however, a 19-year-old, I don't know how old I was, 18, uh, that it was just too complex for me to cope with, and I regret, you know, it would have been incredibly impactful for me to take in that show because it was from his earliest work all the way up
Yeah,
to the day before he died. He painted on a piece. So
that's crazy.
yeah.
So next question is, who or what has made the biggest impact in your life that makes you who you are?
mm, that's a good question. My I've written about this. This was all in the time frame of the central part of my TEDx talk that
Mm-hmm.
that I'll not talk about because I want people to watch it to experience it. But it
Yeah.
was just a couple years after that, or maybe a year after that. My sixth grade teacher was incredibly impactful to me for her belief in
Mm.
in in my potential. No
Yeah.
one no one knew that I could pull any of this off. But somehow she she said, "Well, this is what you need to do." And she told me how to do it, and I did those things, and I reached the goal that I was wanting to reach, which was I had been in the lowest reading and math classes going through grade school. And in sixth grade, we went to the middle school, and I was in the lowest reading and math class in sixth grade. And we went to different classrooms for those subject matters. So we didn't
Mm-hmm.
stay in the class that our homeroom, so to speak. And at the beginning of the year, a bunch of my friends were going to an after school special event class called
Mm-hmm.
Challenge, and they were super excited. They were telling me all kinds of stuff that they were doing in it, and they were going on field trips, and I'm like, I want to do that. And I asked my teacher, how do I get into it? And she said, well, you can't because you're in the lowest reading and math, and they're all in the highest reading and math. And I'm like, well, how do I get into those? And she said, well, I don't think that's possible. And I'm like, how do I get into those? I was like, I wanted this, right? Yeah, I was super persistent. And she told me how to do it, and I got started getting 100% in all of my tests, and I had never tried. I had up until
Mm-hmm.
that point, I really didn't have any motivation to try to do something more than just hang out in school and draw. that's that's basically what
Oh,
I
like
was.
before
Yeah,
your teacher like kind of motivated you.
totally. Yeah, I would enjoy getting in trouble in grade school, because the teachers sometimes would put me out in the hallway, and they think I was getting punished, but I would just get into my desk and draw. I'd put a piece of paper on and draw something. So it was like, this is the best. It's a quiet, nobody's bothering me. It's like my little tiny
You would
studio.
intentionally
Yeah,
get into trouble.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. So she was incredibly influential. There's been many others that were influential, but that was this turning point.
That was
That
a big moment.
yeah,
Yeah.
and about 20 years after that, I had my sister and mom look for her. I was living in Seattle, and they had
Mm.
both been teachers, and so they looked to find out where this woman was, if she was still teaching. They found her. They found her phone number, and I called her, and I was able to
Oh
thank
wow.
her. Yeah, it was super. That was a lot of tears. Yeah, yeah. It was a
That's awesome.
special moment
Yeah.
to tell her how much she
I mean, sometimes
changed.
we don't realize like how much people can really impact us.
Mm,
And I think, especially when you're younger and your adolescence, you're a lot more impressionable. Um, so that's great that you had somebody that believed in you.
yeah, I had, and she wasn't the only one. There's been quite a few that it's been a
Yeah.
blessing.
So what has been one lesson you learned the hard way?
Oh God, just one. Uh, wow,
Yeah.
one lesson that learned the hard way. That's a good question. Hmm. It seems this is kind of not fair because most of the time it is. Getting my black belt in karate was a lesson learned the hard way, but it was purposefully the
Why?
hard way. It was just a tremendous amount of work.
Hmm.
Yeah, but that was not the angle of that question. I kind of dodged that question. Uh, well,
What's the real one?
I think because this is kind of a theme throughout, kind of touching back on the gallery system. I was in
Yeah.
galleries. I was in galleries for maybe 5 6 years in the early 2000s, and
Hmm.
it's like the lesson learned the hard way is that that's not where I want to be going. It it
Like
was
knowing when to, like, say I'm done with
right.
this chapter.
Yeah, the hard part of the lesson was trying to get into them so
Hmm.
intensely, right? And then once I'm there, it's like, well, this isn't really what I'm looking for. It doesn't this is not the relationships that I was envisioning.
It's kind of like people who strive for success, like maybe financially, they want to get paid six figures, and then they think their whole life will change when
Mm,
they get there.
mm-hmm.
They get there, they don't feel any different.
Right.
Is that like
That's
how it is?
pretty much, yeah. And
Yeah.
not that I certainly wasn't having any success. Yeah. So it is somewhat like that, but the
But
gallery
just
that's
that feeling, like
yeah, yeah.
you didn't
The
feel any different when you got there.
yeah, and it felt a little worse.
Mm,
It felt like,
yeah.
oh, I'm there, but I'm I'm in a place where something is supposed to happen, and I finally got there, but the thing that was supposed to be happening isn't happening. So it was
I think I think this is a common theme for my podcast, but I think that is like the pursuit of happiness, when you have to enjoy the moment by moment,
mm,
not the destination. And that
totally.
sounds so cliche, but
It's
it's
real.
true. It's true. Yeah,
Mm,
it goes back to climbing Mount Everest.
mm,
There's a big difference between actually climbing it and enjoying that journey
Right.
and hardships and adversity versus taking a helicopter ride up there.
Exactly. I've used that example analogy before. It's totally, you're on the right
There's a
track.
big difference in the way you
Massive.
feel. Yep.
Yeah, totally.
So I
And
think
and
that's what that
and
story is about.
and there's a lot of people who take the helicopter and they say, "Oh yeah, I've climbed Mount Everest." Well, no, you haven't actually. Yeah, you took a helicopter up there.
They're frauds.
Yeah, they're frauds. Yeah. So, and they pay a price that is,
It's just like winning the lottery.
yeah,
There's a difference between those stories of rags to riches, homeless to millionaire,
right,
and the people that just won the lottery.
totally.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. There's a great benefit to hard work, meaningful work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and 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 slogging. Sometimes there's a lot of slogging that happens. A lot of late nights, a lot of extra time, extra effort, extra energy, extra focus. That
Mm.
that it does pay off. I believe so.
Well, I think that's a key component to feeling fulfilled
Mm-hmm.
is the hard work.
Absolutely.
Like I don't think you can truly feel like fulfilled and happy and peaceful in life if you don't have some sort of work that you're doing that you feel passionate about.
Absolutely.
So, my next question is what would you want to experience if you had all the time and money in the world?
Mm. Phew. I'd want to experience having all the time and money in the world. No,
What would you do with
yeah,
that?
I
What would you
would,
do with
I would do a decent amount of traveling.
Okay.
There's a lot of artwork that I would like to see firsthand. There's a lot of music that I would like to hear performed. There's a lot of architecture, a lot of nature that I would like to see and hang out in the way when my wife and I travel, we will on our honeymoon, as an example, we flew to Merida in the
Mm,
Yucatan and
mm.
stayed there like 2 nights, and we had reservations on the Caribbean side, uh, like 10 days later. And she said, "Well, what are we going to do in the meantime?" I said, "Let's rent a car." She said, "Okay." So we rented a car, got up that morning, and she said, "Where are we going?" I said, "Let's go that way."
Let's go north.
Well, we went south. I said, "Let's go south." North
Okay.
north was the ocean, so that would have been a short trip. So we just drove into the jungle, and we had
Mm,
we had a super great time. We drove basically right to one of these old Mayan sites, uh, Ixan. I can't. That's close to the name of it, but it was just totally right in the middle of the jungle. We spent maybe 3 or 4 hours driving there, and then we started heading east, and we just went from small town to small town, and hung out in the squares and talked to people, and just had walks and strolls, and that we just it was improvisational. So having all the money and all the time in the world, we would do a lot of improvisational traveling. We would get
would you
someplace.
still create art?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Building a dream studio would be
Okay.
on the list. We'd have a, a small, beautiful, functional house and a couple large studios for the two of
Studio is
us.
bigger than the house.
Yeah,
Just
probably.
kidding.
Yeah, yeah. I'd like a very large wall to paint on and draw on.
Well, Pat, thank you for coming on. Is there anything you'd like to leave and resonate the audience with before we close out?
You all have creativity inside of you. Tune in to what it was like to be creative when you were young and explore that now and have fun with it.
Pat Williams, everyone. Go check him out. Where can people find you?
I can be found at Patrick Williams Stay Creative or Satori Innovation. And those are my business sites. But to look at art, celebrationflowerpaintings.com and patrickwilliams.com are my 2 art sites. I have 2 Instagram sites. PMW Creativity is my morning meditation site where you can see a new drawing every single day. And PMW_camera. You can see a new photograph every day. And Patrick at patrickwilliams.com or Patrick at patrickwilliams.com is my email. I'm happy to take emails and have conversations. And if you want help on creativity, I can certainly do that. If you want to commission a painting, I'd be happy to help in that department also. It's been a pleasure, Thomas.
Thank you. And everyone, go check him out. And as always, stay curious. Keep going. You got this. Peace.
Peace.